realized that there's much more to yoga than meets the eye. There's more than just these shapes, and I need to go and explore what that is, like immediately. If you're listening and you've always had this view of what yoga is, take a moment to notice that your view of yoga is going to be shaped by the way that it's been marketed to you. You could remain more open and try things for the experience to see, then we would be more healed as a world. There's so much questioning around things that come from the earth that are 100% natural because it feels too easy. We want to admit that we have a choice to be able to change the way that we think, that we are incredibly powerful beings and your thoughts don't necessarily have to define you.
What's up, guys? Welcome to the Physio Diaries podcast. We are your co-hosts, Dr. Melanie Ziaziris
and Dr. Alice Koshavatsky, where students, healthcare professionals, and wellness junkies come to get the inside scoop of the healthcare and wellness industry.
The podcast you didn't know you needed by your favorite travel physical therapist. What's good, physio friends? Welcome back to another episode of the Physio Diaries podcast. Today, we are going down the rabbit hole of the world of yoga. So, of course, we had to get Angie, aka Tiwari Yoga, on, the founder of Unearthed Yoga and big social media presence in the yoga space. We want today's episode to really dive into the truth around what yoga really is, debunk some myths, and get into the misrepresentation of yoga and how you can practice it outside of the physical practice, what we typically see and hear of. Whether you are new to the world of yoga, have been practicing for years, or just curious about the mind-body connection, this one's for you. So let's get into it. Let's start from the beginning. Angie, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and how you got into practicing yoga?
Yeah, well, firstly, thank you so much for having me on. I have had quite a roller coaster relationship with yoga, I would say. And I think that's something that a lot of people don't realize when they think about yoga teachers. They think you must be really calm, always relaxed, easy breezy. And the reality is that is absolutely and was not the case for me personally. So I am Indian on both sides. I grew up in an Indian household with my parents teaching me the practice of yoga, but not labeling it as yoga. So doing lots of those other elements and other practices that you mentioned don't necessarily mean roll out the mat, let's do yoga for an hour as we see it today. It was a very traditional, authentic practice, which included some yoga poses, but it also was about breathing techniques. It was also about devotion and prayer and connection to having a faith, the importance of that. And so that was my foundation. That was my childhood. When I rediscovered yoga in the West, and I was born and brought up in the UK, but when I kind of rediscovered it, when I was about maybe 17, 18, 19, I just saw them as two completely different practices. So there was what my parents had taught me, there's what I'd done in India, there was that yoga, and then there was the yoga in the gyms and the studios that was so far removed that I genuinely didn't think that they were connected, which I know sounds really bizarre, but that was just my experience of it. And I had a real love-hate relationship with it. And I would say that probably went on for about 5 years. That came from me feeling all of the emotions I labeled as negative come to the surface, and I didn't like that. So I felt the envy comparing myself to the person next to me who could do a pose and I couldn't do it. I felt the jealousy, I felt the hatred, I felt the annoyance towards the yoga teacher because I wanted to go back and get on with my to-do list, and she was just keeping me lying down in this posture. And so there was a lot of bad stuff that came up, but then there was also this rejuvenation and deep relaxation that I hadn't felt, I guess, ever, and this big release that I didn't notice when I did anything else other than yoga. So even though it was 5 years of love, hate, that love was strong enough to pull me back. And eventually I went through a bit of a crisis period in my life that drew me even closer to yoga. And in those moments, I had this revelation and big releases that just instantly fascinated me. And I realized that there's much more to yoga than meets the eye. There's more than just these shapes. And I need to go and explore what that is, like immediately. So that's what led me to then do my teacher training. I went out to India. I reconnected back with my roots a lot more. And then that was 7 years ago. And here I am. And in that time, I've been teaching yoga amidst juggling a career. So I spent 10 years. I quit two years ago. I quit. But I had 10 years working in corporate technology. Very, very different.
Very different.
Yoga industry, the wellness industry, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
But I learned so much in that career, and I also learned so much in yoga. They went hand in hand in some kind of beautiful but odd way. I run yoga retreats for everyone. I run an online yoga studio called UNEARTHED, where people all over the world come and practice online. So lots of beautiful things that have come out of that. But it didn't always feel easy. And I think that's something that I always like to share, because you said we're going to debunk some of the myths. That's probably one of the biggest myths about yoga.
No, I totally agree with that. So I don't really think I've said this on the podcast before, but I was a yoga instructor for 5 years in undergrad and physical therapy school. I totally agree with that. Like, it does not come easy. And so many people think it's supposed to come easy. And like, no, it's not supposed to be easy to like sit there without your phone and like, unwind and like kind of disconnect from like the outside world. Like, it's meant to be a mental challenge, but also being a yoga instructor as well. Like, I've definitely felt like social media makes it seem so pretty, and like you have to be able to do a handstand and hold it and go into scorpion and like all of these other crazy variations. And it's like hard when like you also can't do that as a yoga instructor because of all the things you see on social media. So I like see it from both aspects as well, just like your physical or your practice in general, physical, and the other aspects that we'll talk about. And then also like as a person taking a class or trying out different methods.
There's just so much to the practice of yoga. And if you don't know that and you do think it's just what you see on Instagram or what you see, let's be real, in most of the classes that we go to at studios or gyms, you do see it as a practice that's all about the aesthetics and it's all about the way that you look. And what's so sad is that yoga is about going inwards. And so, yes, there are these movements that, by the way, are incredible for your body. Flexibility, mobility, you know, just the endorphins that are released, getting into your body and getting out of the busy mind. We can't detract from the benefits, but what we can do is emphasize that while you're making yourself go through that workout, can you also identify what's happening within and make it a work in? Because it's actually quite easy to move through a dynamic flow and just completely ignore what's happening in your mind. And sometimes it's harder to do the slowing down, the more restorative practices, because naturally we have a resistance towards slowing down because we're in this society that's constantly telling us to do, not to be, but to get the next job done, to tick something off the to-do list. You can't just sit still. And like you said, your phone is the biggest distraction. The mind then keeps up with the phone. So, you know, you like having a laptop with 100 tabs open is how it feels in the mind. And it's the same with
true.
You've got like 20 apps open on your phone and all of them are, you just could constantly keep scrolling. Whereas you think way back when there was the end of a website, you couldn't just constantly scroll. And so there's so much of life now that is just kind of this endless consumption. And it's detracting us continually away from understanding ourselves. And every single thing of life, the way we perceive things, that's what it's down to. You look outside and it's raining and you can get so angry because it's raining and your day's ruined. You could think, oh, the plants are going to be so happy because they've got the water they need to thrive. Someone's thriving in the rain. Is it going to be you?
True.
Like you choose how you view every situation. And if you're not aware of what's happening up here, then your life will just continue to repeat these patterns of these emotions that maybe you don't want to experience, or these explosions and these triggers that maybe you don't want to have. And that all sounds really deep. And that's because yoga does get you really deep. And I think that's the big misunderstanding of it. I don't think it's for you. It's probably because you've been trained to not want to address some of those tricky things that come up. If we don't confront them, it was going to come up in our body at some point. So you have the decision as to whether you want to face them head on or continue to push it down into the subconscious, which we know is not really good for anyone.
Totally agree. I've literally have had people tell me like, I don't really like yoga. Like, it's too slow. Like, I can't do it. And I'm like, you're the one that needs it the most. Okay. You probably need it. Yeah, I was gonna say, so, I'm someone who's very like energetic, and sometimes like my mind goes like a million different places. Like I've always been like that. And I've tried, mindful breathing, I've tried meditation. And for me, those things, it was just really hard to stay focused with those things. But I started like consistently going to yoga classes at my last contract. And I really, really liked it. Was like, they call it like yoga nidra. They basically just it was like a guided meditation. They had pillows for us, bolsters, and they would put us in like different positions, and you just lay there for like several minutes. That was finally what got me to like slow my mind down and actually relax, because I think the combination of like moving your body in a certain way and then also working on like mindfulness and just connecting with your body, that helped me a lot more than just kind of sitting there and listening to someone be like, okay, like relax your toes, like relax your knees, like bring attention to your hips. Like actually putting my body into different positions was really grounding, I feel like. And then I would notice, like you said, like my thoughts start to wander, and they would bring me back. And I was like, oh, I didn't even realize I was like thinking about all these things deep down.
Almost you're a detective and an investigative in your own mind, and take this bird's eye view approach where you actually zoom out and then you can look. And then, like you said, you're like, oh my goodness, like I've been thinking about that situation at work that happened like 3 weeks ago, and it's come up 5 times in the space of, I don't even know how long I've been lying here for. So clearly that's something that is, living rent free in your mind. It's occupying space in your mind. And is it occupying space in your mind and leading to something that's positive? Or is it occupying space in your mind and creating emotions that are, every emotion is having an impact on the cells of your body. Like, you have a thought and it creates stress within your mind, and the stress is going to make an impact negatively on your body. It causes inflammation. We know that stress is linked to so much disease and illness. And what is stress? Well, it's, like I said, you look outside, it's raining. Do you want to get really annoyed at the fact it's raining and feel really like this has messed up my whole day and now I feel in a rage? Or do you want to just change the way that you see it? And I think sometimes it's as simple as that. We don't want to admit that we have a choice to be able to change the way that we think, that we are incredibly powerful beings, and your thoughts don't necessarily have to define you. But it's that realization that is incredibly powerful. And that's where we start. It's with getting a deeper sense and a deeper level of awareness. And it's so good that you tried. Yoga Nidra is an incredible practice. For people who are listening who don't know what that means, it literally means deep sleep, like yogic deep sleep. And so you're guided almost hypnotically through every single part of the body, from your left toe, your right toe. And that is it for, you can make it 10 minutes, 20 minutes, you can do it for an hour. But as you lie there, you are bringing the mind and the body into connection with each other. And the word yoga means union. So it is about, how can you say mind body connect? Of course it's connected, but it's not, because you're physically in a yoga practice, but your mind is thinking about dinner later. Or you're physically at dinner with your loved one, but your mind is thinking about what happened this morning at work. So we're not connected at all. We're very disconnected. And that connection happens because you're drawn to think about a body part. So it really brings you present into, you'll notice hip ache that you didn't realize you had before. Or you'll notice, like you said, something's coming up in your mind repeatedly. And then you choose what to do with that, right? You choose as to whether you continue to dive into it or we continue to suppress it. But the main thing is to know that it doesn't mean you've done it wrong if your mind has wandered. And that's really, really natural, important. That is part of the practice. That actually is the practice. The recognition is so important.
Yeah. So how do you typically, like, in more, I guess you can get into as much detail or more simplistic verbiage, but for someone who's really new to yoga or really doesn't know anything about yoga, how do you define it to them?
The word means union. So it doesn't mean handstand, it doesn't mean flexible, it doesn't mean calm, it means union. So like I said, it's the connection of yourself within. Now, within the yoga philosophy, what can get confusing for many people is that there are many, many different philosophical concepts. There's one that's quite well known, which is the 8 limbs of yoga. So 8 kind of steps that you take in order to get to spiritual enlightenment. There's also something known as the 5 sufferings of the mind. So 5 things that cause suffering, and how do you overcome them to get to enlightenment or freedom. And there's many, many more. But if we look at what the goal is of what these breakdown 5 steps or 8 steps or 12 steps or 4 pathways or 3 pathways, because there are so many, you've got to remember yoga, centuries old practice from India. We're talking 5,000 years old, these texts and many texts that talk about these different lineages, these different traditions, these different philosophies. But ultimately the goal, self-realization, connection with this highest divine force that lies within you. Forget about any religion. We've got the divine within each and every one of us. You might call it Allah, you might call it God, you might call it Hanumanji, you might call it Jesus. It's a faith, it's a divine that lies within all of us. It keeps us all connected as well. We're all interconnected. But getting to a point of realization that you are more than just this flesh and this mind, and there's a spirit that lives within inside you. We can get to that recognition through a variety of different practices. For some people, like Alice, you were saying, the Yoga Nidra really helped you to connect deeper and feel more of an understanding and that inner voice, that inner knowing. For some people, it is a really energizing, dynamic practice with full of inversions and headstands and handstands. And for others, it's simple as sitting and just closing your eyes and focusing on your breath. So the way that you get to the state of union, the state of yoga, because that's what it is. It's a state rather than a practice you roll out your mat or you go to class or you go on retreat. How you get to that state can be many different ways. It might be going to chant at a temple or just having an internal chanting practice through Vedic, also known as transcendental meditation, where you're saying a mantra repeatedly in your mind and that repetition helps you go within. It doesn't matter how you get there. It's kind of like this room with lots and lots of different doors, and no one's judging which door you open because ultimately it leads you to all the different doors. But it's getting to a state of union, of freedom, which is moksha, self-realization, and this connected state within. There's also a beautiful saying which is antarmukha, which literally means inward facing. And you think, how much of the time do we do that? We're either reading a book, we're on our phone, we're having a conversation, eyes are open, we're looking, there's so much sensory overload. And how much time do we spend just kind of cocooning? And I find often with a lot of my students and people that come on retreats, they don't make time for it in their day because life is just so chaotic. But there's this everyday itch and frustration and demand and a lot of giving and a lot less time to receive.
Yeah.
Ultimately, long-winded answer, because there's just so much to it and it's such a big practice.
For sure.
Internal freedom. And isn't that kind of what we're all searching for when we say we want peace and happiness?
Definitely agree with that. One of the biggest reasons why I wanted to have you on was to really talk about the other ways that you can practice yoga, and everything you just said too. It's a mental state of being, it's not just the physical state of being and the physical postures. So with that then, what other ways do you, or maybe not just you in general, but how else can you practice yoga without going to a vinyasa class or, a class?
I would say that the most accessible way for me to answer that question is to help you when you do go to your vinyasa class to treat it as something deeper than just movement. So that's step number 1. We'll get on to other practices and other elements of yoga that you can do.
Yeah.
The first thing is, the reality is you want to go deeper in your yoga practice, but the only thing you're being offered is your vinyasa. So then how are you going to carve out time to go to your vinyasa and also to do deeper, different elements of yoga? So when you go to your vinyasa, go to it. See if you can get to class a little bit earlier than you usually would and take a moment for yourself to just sit on the mat or lie on the mat, close your eyes. It starts there. Put your phone away and just focus on where you are. Really ground into the moment. Be more aware of your breath throughout the class, because your breath will hold in the difficult poses, or your breath might feel really tight and sharp. your breath is such a key awareness to your state of being. And you can alter your breath in a way that literally alters everything in your body. Calm your nervous system, also boost your energy. Really is a great insight as to what's happening within ourselves. So the breath is a key focus. If you're someone that practices and you're kind of forgetting about breathing, bring that. You're practicing yoga even more if you do that. And then there's things like chanting and using mudras. So chanting is incredible for our health. The vibrations that we make calm the whole of the system, get us more into that state of rest. Your food is better digested. You look more glowing in your skin. Your stress levels come down. Your blood pressure is heightened and it's too high. It's going to come back level with regular practice, of course. So chanting is something that's lovely. If you are religious, you can chant the name of the god that you're associated with, that you feel connected to. But you can also do, if you're not someone that's religious, something as simple as chanting the 5 vowels, A-E-I-O-U, the letters of the alphabet. It's not religious, it's not spiritual. You're still doing the chant and you'll feel that vibration and that connection. You can also chant whatever comes out of your mouth. So this is a mixture of chanting, but also this big release from the throat. We know this as Vishuddha Chakra, the throat energy center. So you can do something as simple as taking a big breath in. And when you open the mouth, don't just let the breath release, but just see what sound comes out. It feels so silly and you'll feel self-conscious doing it, but just do it on your own and just see how it feels. So that vibration, anything where you're making a noise is really, really beautiful. Just tapping in a little bit deeper to remembering you're an animal and allowing this guttural release that maybe you don't.
That's such a good point.
I think like that's, roar like a lion. Actually, in yoga, we've got something that's known as Simha Kriya, which is the lion Kriya, the cleansing ritual, but it's also a breathing technique. And you basically take a big breath in, you open your mouth, you stick out your tongue, and it's a big release and it's a big detoxifier. And it just makes you feel like you've got that energy out. You've dispelled something. You've expelled something. We're very, very good as humans. If there's something to expel, we're going to hold it in. If we want to cry, no, wrap it up. Don't cry. And crying is the same as laughing. It's just something is trying to come out of you. What are you doing? You're trying to stop it. It's, it's the same as if you've got diarrhea. I'll take, in the UK, we have something called Imodium. And Imodium, literally, I don't know how it works, but it just stops a natural process, your body's natural process of trying to get whatever toxins you've had out of you. Things like that. So just really allowing a release through the voice is really powerful. It's powerful not only for all the benefits that I mentioned with the nervous system, with regulation, with releasing stress, but we can really not speak our truth. And we can really hold back the way that we're feeling in certain situations in life. We don't feel like we can express ourselves freely. We don't think it's safe to do so. And it all lives within us. Even something as simple as just letting yourself roar, you can feel a little bit of a release in relation to these maybe deeper, darker, scarier topics. So that's a really powerful thing. Mudras. So mudra means gesture or seal. So you will probably know hands together is Anjali Mudra. So Anjali Mudra is a divine gesture, divine offering, or hands in prayer. We do this one quite a lot. Basically, it's the connection of the left hand with the right hand. It's a representation of that union of the two sides of the body that represent different energies, that represent the energetic of the sun and the energetic of the moon. And so there's lots of different mudras you can do. This one is called Simha Mukha Kriya, which is the lion's face gesture. Right palm in the left palm with the thumbs touching and then resting in your lap is Dhyan Mudra, the mudra of meditation. So this you can do when you're sitting on a plane and you feel a bit anxious, or you're sitting on any public transport, or if you're in a meeting and you just want to center yourself. These are so accessible because you can do them anywhere. You don't need a mat. You don't need a guide. There are lots of them to remember. I am launching a product which is going to really help anyone who wants to remember them. So that's coming soon. So stay tuned for that.
Okay.
Kini mudra. I mean, there's just so many of them.
Nice.
And it will change your energetic, it'll shift your energy in the body to a desired effect. So if you feel tired, there are ones you can do in the morning to wake you up. If you feel too awake and you need to calm down and slow down, there are ones you can do to relax as well.
Okay, so for those who, like, you did explain it a little bit, mudras, but can you explain, I guess, more how they impact our nervous system, especially for the people who love the science and like the nitty-gritty details of it all?
Yes, of course. So as per Ayurveda and yoga, it's believed that our fingers have got different marma points, and kind of like your feet, reflexology is a practice. So there's parts of our hands and our fingers that can connect, that can then create a change within the body. But deeper than that, we have a big, not just in Indian culture actually, but a lot of Eastern cultures, Chinese medicine as well, they have this rooting approach with the 5 elements. And so the 5 elements are within us. So, we know we're made up of a lot of water. When you feel a sensation of jealousy, of envy, of anger, of frustration, any of those emotions, you can feel this warmth and this heat in the body, which is the element of fire. And so all of these elements live within us, and the elements are represented by the thumbs and the fingers as well. So the thumb is representative of the element fire. The first finger is representative of air, the middle finger space, the ring finger earth, and the pinky finger water. So when we connect the fingers together in various different ways, we're also balancing those elements. And therefore, from an Ayurvedic perspective, Ayurveda, by the way, for people who don't know, is the sister science of yoga. And it literally means the science of life, or the knowledge of life. It's the oldest holistic wellness system. And very much today, we're seeing a replica of Ayurveda's principle, which is look at the body holistically when you're going into treatment. Don't just look at the rash on the skin and put a bandage over it. Understand, when did the rash appear? What period of time? If you're someone that menstruates, how is this relating to your menstrual cycle? What is your digestion like? What is your diet like? What are your stress levels? What are the relationships in your life like? Every single aspect of it is going to impact our health. And therefore that rash is not just a rash on the skin. It's something deeper than that. It's linked to so much else. And that's really how Ayurveda would heal somebody. We would look at you on an individual level. You both may have a rash. You would both get a different treatment plan, because that rash is going to be appearing differently for both of you. So that is kind of how Ayurveda works on a basic level. And it uses natural, herbal things from the world, things from the planet. The belief is, firstly, we're so interconnected with nature, but secondly, nature provides us everything we need in this life. So it's already there. And so from an Ayurvedic perspective, we look at every single element of why somebody is not doing great. And there's something that's known as the 3 doshas. And the doshas are basically our key characteristics. We have all 3 of them within us. Why? Because the doshas are made up of the 5 elements in varying order. So just really quickly on that, Vata is made up of the elements of air and space. Pitta dosha is made up of the elements of fire and water. Kapha dosha is made up of the elements of earth and water. And so that is why when we bring our hands together, fingers together, different variations, you're balancing these elements that are out of balance within the body. So it's a great way to kind of think a little bit more holistically. I'm not saying don't follow your prescription, and make sure that you are seeking help where you need it, but also look at these alternative remedies of where you can ground and settle yourself. And like I said, with the mudras, similarly to the yoga poses, there's a time to do them. You wouldn't do what's known as sun salutations, very dynamic, very energizing, before you're going to go to bed, because that's going to energize you. It's going to wake you up. It's a great one to start your day. Similarly, you're not going to do certain mudras to end your day if they're mudras that are actually energizing and bringing up this wake up state of the body. So we need to be practicing carefully as well, because there's a deep science to all of this, and it's a centuries old practice that needs to be respected. We need to know, and sometimes I think we take things out of context and we don't always know.
So I have a question. What sorts of Ayurvedic practices do you kind of do daily or a few times a week that you really like?
So every single day, I use something called a tongue scraper.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
We both do.
Yes, for years.
Yes.
I'm like super into just like learning Ayurvedic stuff. So I like do the oil pulling, tongue scraping, all that. And actually, I got Alice onto tongue scraping when we were in physical therapy
Yeah.
school.
Yeah, we
Amazing.
lived together for a couple years, and I remember she showed me it, and at first I was like, that's very odd. Like I used to like brush my tongue, but the first time I used it, I was like, I've never felt like my mouth has ever been this clean in my entire life. And once you start, I feel like you can never go back. Like I do it every single morning, first thing in the morning, like when I wake up, and it just feels so like refreshing and cleansing.
That exactly. Once you start and you see the
Mm-hmm.
amount of gunk, that is the only way to
Mm-hmm.
describe it. In Ayurveda, we refer to it as amma, which means toxins, but it's literally
Mm-hmm.
gunk in English to you and I. And you see that on your tongue and you think, I went to sleep and my tongue, this wasn't on my tongue. Overnight,
Mm-hmm.
your body does a detoxification process and it deposits this gunk, these toxins, on your tongue. Firstly, it's going to give you bad breath if you don't do it. Secondly, it is going to
Yes.
limit your digestion because you start digesting on your tongue. It's the community that there's food in your mouth.
Mm-hmm.
Get ready to digest. And thirdly, you actually taste your food better because you've not got a layer of dirt on the top of it. So using a copper tongue scraper in the morning is an absolute essential for me. Brushing my
Yeah,
teeth.
I was going to ask, you said copper. So you use copper?
I use copper. Yeah, it makes such a big difference. Oil pulling as well. So cold pressed sesame oil in the mouth. It can taste a bit disgusting. Coconut oil can taste a little bit nicer. Tablespoon in the mouth, swill it around the mouth or just hold it and then spit it out. Just swilling it around for about 5 minutes. It does go quicker than it feels. 5 minutes sounds like a long time. So this is all kind of oral hygiene. And then I use an herbal based toothpaste. So either charcoal based or clove based. These are Ayurvedic toothpastes you can find, and they are a little bit not as harsh, so they're a little bit more gentle, but they are great for strong gums. You do have to get used to the flavor. People can be like, that. My husband's like, this is disgusting, but I am just quite used to it now. So those are my 3 top oral care, oral hygiene, which is super important. I do something really simple, which is I brush my hair, and I know that sounds so silly, but I have a 1-year-old baby, so there are some days when I want to do it. I just don't feel as put together, but also you're stimulating your scalp, so it's really good for the circulation of the head and also for hair growth. And just using a hairbrush in lots of different directions rather than just so really getting under the back, the sides, the front, that can be really good. Also, if you have tension in your head, you open up with a headache or whatever, that's something that can really help. So that's another thing I do. When I'm brushing my teeth, I have my 2-minute electric toothbrush. So I do my yoga then. And when I say I do my yoga, I mean, I'll do any stretches I can do in 2 minutes while brushing my teeth and while therefore standing. So I will do squats. I'll either do 50 squats, which you can do 50 in 2 minutes if you kind of get on it, or I'll just get down to a really low squat position, shift my hips from side to side, or I will do, shoulder rolls, tilt my head from side to side, like any movement to just start the body waking up. Because 2 minutes, you can actually do quite a lot in 2 minutes time. So that's another thing I do. What else do I do? Warm water to start the day. I want to reach for the coffee so bad. I am that girl. And I have to really force myself. Hot water or warm water, and then I can have my coffee. But I just need to hydrate first. So those are a few things. There's also something called nasya, which is oil in your nose. So again, please don't just pour oil up your nose if you're listening to this. It is a specific type of oil. You can Google nasya, you'll find it. And you put just a few drops, then you lie back. And, in Ayurveda and in yoga, oiling is a really big part of your overall health. So the Sanskrit word sneha means to oil, and it means to love, which is really beautiful. So my evening practice is a full body oil massage, not every day, but when I get the time. Full body oil massage is like you feel so cocooned and loved. And if you oil the feet, padabhyanga, the foot massage, before you go to bed, you will sleep better. It's really settling and soothing. So I have quite a few practices. It sounds like a lot, but when you get, this becomes like brushing your teeth, which you do every day. It's the same thing. You just add a few more extra onto it, and we like the discipline and the routine as well.
Yeah, for sure.
So I've seen a lot of like more recently on social media, a lot about oil pulling, and you kind of talked about it, like swishing the coconut oil or sesame oil in your mouth and then in the nose too. But what are some of the benefits, or what's the purpose of doing that?
Drawing out, so for the mouth, drawing out the impurities in the mouth. You're eating every single day. Even if you brush your teeth before you go to bed, like I said, everybody will wake up and everybody knows that their tongue is a little bit whiter. Like everybody has that, whether you're tongue scraping or not, that just happens. So every night there is that process that happens. That's why we do the oil swilling in the morning. It's not an evening practice. It has to be done first thing in the morning because it's drawing out any impurities, any toxins that have been deposited overnight in that overnight process that happens are then being pulled. The oil is collecting them all. That's why it's so important you don't swallow that oil, that you then spit it out after you've swilled it around. It also strengthens the gum and it removes those toxins. And then tongue scraping does that same kind of similar process. The oil of the nose, if you've not done it before and you do it, you'll notice that any kind of residual gunk that is with the nose especially, the filtration system of the nose is designed in such a way. This is why it's better to breathe through your nose than through your mouth. And this is a yogic practice of being aware of our prana, our pranayam, the breathing techniques. Prana means life force or life force energy, or simplified to breath. Why should we breathe in through the nose more? Because that is the way we've been designed to breathe. So there's a whole, your nose has got hairs in it. Your nostrils got hairs in it. The hairs are there to make sure that it catches all of the pollutants in the air, all of the dust. The mouth doesn't have that same thing. So if you're predominantly mouth breathing is not as good for your health as nasal breathing. Nasal breathing is also great for nitric oxide production, which is something we naturally produce, which is great for vasodilation, meaning that you can lower your blood pressure, you're opening up. The circulation and everything is happening much better as it should be. And why did I bring that up when we're talking about oiling the nose? You've therefore got this dirt and this gunk that lives in the nose, and you can blow your nose, but sometimes you need something to help get it out. So the oil works just like if you're washing pans and pots with cold water. There's still going to be some things that are stuck, that are a bit harder to get out. And it's like thinking that hot water is like the oil. There's another lovely practice called jalneti, where you use a little pot that looks a little bit like a watering can.
Oh, the neti pot.
The neti pot, yeah. It's a saline solution. So it's a salt water solution that is exactly the same that you have in your body. Because when you cry, it's a bit salty, isn't it? If you taste a tear that drips down to your mouth, you can feel it's salt water. Just like the sea, just like the ocean, because we're so interconnected. So it's a saline solution. It's about half a teaspoon to 1 cup of warm water. Make sure the water is boiled first and then cooled down. Make sure the salt is non-iodized, like a pink Himalayan salt is perfect, and not chunks of it, so really thin. And then you pour that water through one nostril and it comes out of the other, and then you pour it through one and it comes out of the other. And so much gunk will come out. You will be like, what? I didn't even have a snotty nose before. Now, where is all this gunk coming from? That happens with jalneti and it happens with nasya. It happens with both of those practices because we don't know what is in there that we haven't actually flushed out of the system. So essentially, these are all detoxification processes, because the belief in Ayurveda is if we don't remove the toxins, they will find somewhere else to go and they will accumulate and they will create illness and disease.
For sure. With the nose, I guess, I don't want to say oil pulling, but like oiling, do you leave it in there or do you use like a Q-tip? Like what is the process of doing the nose?
So the oil, this is why I say don't buy a bottle and pour oil up your nose at all.
Yeah.
You can buy, so when you get eye drops,
yeah,
the bottle that someone gives you eye drops, you're not pouring a whole, you're not opening, a lid of something and pouring the bottle. You're opening the tiny little eye drop, you're squeezing, and this tiny one will come. Exactly the same for nasya. So when you buy the nasya in the pot, in the little tub it comes in, You're not going to pour it. It's going to be pressed and 2 very, very, very small drops. So you don't feel your whole nostril filling with oil or anything like that. 2 tiny drops, you lie back. And it is a weird sensation if you've not had it done before. I have a whole series of videos on my social media labeled in inverted commas weird Indian wellness rituals for insert topic, like my daily routine or for hay fever, hot weather, whatever. And I kind of put the inverted commas of weird because it is weird to everyone if you're not used to it, but it's time old, ancient, age old wisdom that's survived and stood the test of time. But some of them do feel a little bit odd to do if you've not done them before.
Yeah, no, that's totally fair. I used to post a lot of videos of like, I used coconut oil, but I would post a lot of videos of me doing like coconut oil pulling, and the comments that I would get would just be like people think it's like crazy, just very weird, I guess you could say. And I'm like, there's just so many benefits to it. You just have to be open to it. And it doesn't taste that bad.
Yeah. And I was going to say a lot of the stuff, like you said, Angie, that this has been like something that people have been using for generations and like the longest of centuries. And it actually works. And a lot of like, I guess, Western medicine is kind of like, a lot of it is derived, like a lot of our medications are derived from plant structures, right? And then they kind of change it a little bit. But like people have been using this for generations and generations. And it's just funny to me when people doubt something like natural, like coconut pulling. But then as soon as they hear about this medication that they'll get like instant relief from or whatever it is, like an injection, they're like, no doubts, nothing. They're like, absolutely, yeah, give it to me. That's like a cure-all. And it's like, I don't know, I feel like I went through this more like holistic journey of healing. I went to see like a naturopath, and it opened up my eyes into like how much we have like herbs, teas, like just everything that you can use that's natural that can actually like heal you and actually get to like the root cause of your problem versus just, like you said, putting a Band-Aid on something and being like, okay, you're fixed, you're good.
Exactly. And that is totally it. And it's, if we could remain more open and try things for the experience to see, then we would be more healed as a world. Because you're right, it's very bizarre. There's so much questioning around things that come from the earth that are 100% natural because it feels too easy. Well, how could that work? Because it's just coconut oil. Or it's just something it feels too simple. But you're right, when we don't question synthetic fragrance or anything that's made synthetically, we don't question it, but we question the natural stuff. And I think what's sad is we question the Eastern rituals, we question the ancient Eastern rituals, and that can feel really disrespectful. And it's funny because it all comes back around and then it's labeled as new age or yoga, culturally appropriated, because we only see it as the physical. Cultural appropriation is taking one element and discarding the rest. Breath work is being talked about as new age. It's not. It's a centuries old practice. And then you see the rise of the trends. Like there was a trend that was called oil slugging, which is hair oiling. We've been doing that for centuries in India. Oil pulling as well. All these things then become trends, and then people are interested. But so then it can feel quite disrespectful. But you're right. You just have to be open to it and see what a holistic route is like for you. And if you have medication that you need to take, no one's saying not to take it. But what we're saying is listen to your heart and yourself, because a lot of the time this illness doesn't just appear like that. There have been these warning signs of the illness for a long time, and you've been ignoring them. So, and why? Because you're not inward facing. If we go back earlier to what is yoga, you're outward facing the whole time. So coming back to yourself, there's going to be an internal communication system that you didn't even realize was happening. And you start tuning into it and it starts getting louder because you're listening to yourself a bit more and honoring your voice and your inner wisdom that every single one of us has.
Yeah. Going back to just like yoga and Ayurveda, do you think that you can practice yoga without practicing Ayurveda and vice versa?
Yes, because they're two separate sciences and topics, but both are so deep and so interconnected that I find you'll stumble upon one and then the other, and it doesn't really matter which way that is. I stumbled upon yoga then got interested in Ayurveda, had the realization with both that these are things that my ancestors have been teaching me. A lot of the rituals and the remedies were things my mum would make me when I was growing up. Again, it wasn't labeled as, I'm making you this Ayurvedic concoction. She just knew that if I was suffering with this, she would create this. Like, I had really bad acne as a teenager. She would make me just drink turmeric, like the gold. And it was disgusting.
Just straight turmeric? Oh my gosh.
Like, there was a little bit of water, but it was disgusting. And now every night I'm having turmeric with hot water and milk and ghee and black pepper to help the absorption of the benefits that are in the turmeric. And so all these little rituals, like little things that she would do, and I'm like, oh my God, that was Ayurveda the whole time. Didn't know. Like, she's always oiled our ears. So she always oiled our ears, oiled our hair, oiled our bodies. You know, now it's just baked into Indian culture. But I started on yoga and then Ayurveda, and I was trained in yoga, and then I had my Ayurveda qualification as well. So I do consulting lessons for people who want to go down through. So I think they're so interlinked that you probably will stumble into one or the other. And I think if you take a yogic lifestyle, you do start looking holistically, because you realize that there's so much more to the body than just what meets the eye. And that then takes you down the route of being a bit more natural or being a bit more aware of. Listen, I had synthetic candles in my home, synthetic fragrances, was very happy to pop a paracetamol the second I felt any sort of discomfort, any little headache. Oh, I'll just pop a pill. I didn't do the work to hang on a minute. Like, why should I just drink some water today? Have I drunk anything today? You know, little things like that. And so it is a bit of an unlearning and then a relearning and a re-education to, you know, changing your life in accordance with the way that you would like to live it and having the autonomy to do so.
Totally. I think a lot of people, especially in America, are just so like uncomfortable with changing their like mindset and lifestyles. Like, as we're both physical therapists, so we like see it every day with people who, you know, should be exercising more, but just don't because they don't change their like lifestyle around what they should be doing and what would be beneficial for them. And it's such a mental like block and mindset that I think with yoga like that, it is like a mental state of being, right? Like, we have to change our mindset to be able to do these things. And even like you said, going to a vinyasa class, like you could go to core power and you have a different experience than the person next to you because you are doing like internal work versus not. So I think that's really important.
If you're doing the perfect headstand, but in your mind, you're like bitching at yourself because you're thinking my form could be better and I could be doing this, then are you doing yoga? I would say you're probably not, even though someone else from an external perspective would look at you and say, yeah, she's doing yoga and she's doing it really well. But no, because you don't know the internal state of somebody. And like you said, everything is based on our experience. That word in Sanskrit, anubhav, everything comes back to what is your experience of it. And the reminder that you're the only person that can change it. Like, you can have a PT, you can have a private yoga session with me, you could do whatever. Only you know what's happening up here, and whether it's a limiting place to be or whether it's a lovely place to be, a place of growth, a place of acceptance, a place of surrender to whatever's happening, a place of just like, you know, your best friend's up here. And there's a beautiful quote in the Bhagavad Gita, I'm going to butcher it, but it goes along the lines of saying that your mind can either be your best friend or it can be the worst of your enemies. And it's up to you to create the training program, just like you go to a PT, or a training program, you train your body, you have to be able to train your mind and know that your mind needs to be trained in the same way that your body needs to be trained. And I think we forget that. We just think, our minds are going to be fine. I've got no mental health issues. You don't have to have a mental health issue. You just got to train your mind like how you train your biceps. It's basically the same thing.
Yeah.
Our brain is a muscle.
It is. It's a strong muscle that controls our whole body.
Yeah.
I want to go back. I had a question earlier and I forgot to ask, but I know there's a lot of like different forms of yoga. Like, some are more like slower, some are more like quick, fast paced. You're only like in each pose for a short amount of time. And then also here, we also have like hot yoga where you're in a room like that's like 115 degrees. So I was just curious if you could talk a little bit more about like the different kinds of yogas, and then what your take is on like things like hot yoga or other things like that.
Yeah, let's start with hot yoga. Really
Okay.
great for getting deeper into a particular physical stretch because you're in a heated environment that can make it easier to stretch. Can be dangerous if you overstretch because that can be possible in a heated environment. So really important to be in tune with your body. Can be dangerous if you've not hydrated well that day. So you've had a busy day at work, you've not drunk any water, and then you go to class. You're probably going to feel very faint, very dizzy. You're not going to have the energy. If you've got a hot yoga session that evening, stay really well hydrated in the day, and you're going into the class with the best possible outcome, and stay really hydrated afterwards. I personally love hot yoga. I haven't actually done it in a long time, but I did it a lot in the winter, which in London is just beautiful because it's a cold winter. You go to hot yoga and then you kind of get a bit warm, feel like you've been on holiday.
You come out steaming.
And it's great for someone who wants an energizing, fast-paced, kind of dynamic, really, it's very challenging for most people, even if you go regularly. Hot yoga tends to be a set sequence of a certain number of poses done in a particular order. So if you're someone that likes that routine, that rhythm, to see that growth, and you kind of want to know what's coming next, then hot yoga can be quite nice for you. If you're someone that wants more of like a flow, that is going to change every week, maybe the class is going to be a bit slower one week and then the next week you're going to do different poses, then you might not like hot yoga. You might want to go something that's known as dynamic or vinyasa or energizing, anything like that. Rocket yoga is also of that realm, but it's a bit more stricter in terms of poses that you follow. The same with power yoga. These derive from Ashtanga yoga, which is one of the older forms of yoga, which is very rigid. You know, forget your self-love, calm. No, it's a discipline. You go from this pose to this pose to this pose. It's very kind of army-like. It is the yoga that I trained in, and I absolutely loved it. But I don't teach it so much now. I teach more of a kind of vinyasa flow based on Ashtanga, but with some moments of slowing down and being more restorative. There's benefits to both. If you are moving dynamically and you're only holding a pose for a few breaths, it's not to say that you don't get as many benefits to if you're slowing down and holding the pose for longer. You have less time to get your form correct. And so there can be more room for injuries if you're not basically being more aware of yourself and if you have a teacher that's not fully guiding you. So there's that to be aware of. It can feel like you've fully got out of your mind and into your body, and you've moved in such a way, you've really opened up, but you still can have that beautiful, deep emotional release at the end of class because you've exhausted your body and you've really challenged it and you've been disciplined with it. A restorative practice, often there's a class called yin yoga. You will be holding very, very few poses in that same amount of time. So in an hour, you might do like 8 poses, 10 poses, but you're holding them for such a long time. And when you hold a pose for a long amount of time, the body is still. So what happens to the mind? The mind gets loud. It can be, you know, slow doesn't mean easy. It can feel really intense, the stretch that you're doing, but also your mind, all of these kind of dark spots that will come up to the surface. So it can feel a little bit triggering and a little bit, you know, that's going to happen in our yoga practice. We do get triggered, but sometimes it happens more in a slower, more restorative practice. If you're someone that does a lot of PT sessions and you do a lot of runs and you do a lot of weights and you don't often stretch, it's going to really help deepen into your hips, the back of your legs, your arms, that you're going to get a full body stretch still, albeit in a slower environment and maybe a softer music and that kind of thing. And then you have things like Yoga Nidra, which is what you described earlier, Alice, where you are lying down on your back, basically all class, and someone's guiding you through essentially a meditation. And that's incredibly restorative as well. And it helps the whole body just kind of feels like it's sinking into the mat, and you go to a different realm because of the brain waves that change off the back of getting into that position. They say that if you can't have a nap or you don't have time for a nap and you're not sleeping well, do Yoga Nidra, because it gets you into that sleep state, but you're still conscious. So there's things like that. These are our movement-based practices. Predominantly, that's what we're getting when we're going to studios and gyms. You're getting different variations of movement. Other practices like meditation, what we know as breath work, in yoga we call it pranayama, are still really beneficial, but you're less likely to see them in gyms and in studios. YouTube is a great place to explore them more. If you're interested, I have playlists on YouTube like 7-day challenge, meditation challenge, mindset challenge, those kind of things. They're not going to physically work you out, but they are going to mentally stretch you, which is still super beneficial to do.
Yeah, definitely. We all need those mental challenges.
Exactly.
Going back to the styles real quick, I wanted to know your take on Bikram yoga. Or what are your thoughts?
So Bikram Choudhury is the founder of Bikram Yoga. For people who are listening who don't know who he is, he was a man that basically stole a sequence from a different guru in India, brought it to the West, rebranded it into his name, which I just think is a really egotistical thing to do anyway. Yeah. It's not a yogic move. It's not, non-stealing is literally one of the concepts of yoga. Yeah. Don't take So he took this and then he spread it to the West. There is a documentary, I believe, on Netflix.
It's really interesting. Yeah.
This guy really, really took advantage of students that came over to India, to Thailand, to wherever he was doing his trainings, and abused his students after they had paid like £10,000 to do a yoga teacher training with him, which, by the way, is like an incredible amount of money for you to spend on a yoga teacher training anyway, and you're not getting a refund after you've been abused. I won't go into the abuse. Definitely look into that documentary. You'll Google it. You'll find out. He's managed to flee and leave America, and from my understanding, he's still running these trainings. We need to be really, really hyper-vigilant and aware. I mean, that's absolutely crazy. I always say, don't put anyone on a pedestal. Do not make anyone your guru, your master. Don't look up to anyone. You can be informed, you can be educated, you can love the people that you train with, you can love your teacher, whatever. But ultimately, the cosmic divine energy lives within you. You have all the answers, and you can be inspired by people and you can aspire to be like them or whatever. But just be aware, because unfortunately, Bikram is not the only person that has taken advantage of students. There are a lot of gurus that have done that. And I think if we're not aware of it, we put ourselves in a really vulnerable position. So a lot of, I don't, that's my thought on Bikram Choudhury. You know, I have the review of him as I would have on anyone that had taken advantage in their profession and in their role of people who were in vulnerable positions. I absolutely disagree with that. I don't disagree, however, with Bikram Yoga. We shouldn't call it that anymore because his name should just be, banished from it. Yeah. The actual sequence is really good. It's a great number of poses that have been put together in a particular order. There are great breathing techniques that come as part of it. I believe a lot of studios globally have changed the name from Bikram Yoga to hot yoga. Yoga was done in a hot condition as well. So I don't disagree with the practice, but I disagree with the person. And I think that's something that we struggle with in life. There are different people in life that have done different crimes, but have created beautiful art, music, movie, books. And it's like connected to these different things. Does it mean we shouldn't read the book, watch the movies? Does it tarnish them? I don't personally practice hot yoga, but like I said, I would go to a hot yoga studio in the future for sure. And I would do the sequence that he brought to the world, kind of even more because I know it wasn't actually him that created it. How much of it was actually ever his?
Yeah, definitely. No,
he just slapped his name on it.
Yeah. It's wild.
Yeah, it is crazy. And for anyone listening and anyone that wants to do yoga teacher trainings, don't blindly sign up to someone because they're Indian. I talk a lot about uplifting Indian teachers, and my online yoga studio and my retreats is led by me and a team of Indian teachers, and we're based all over the world. So I really do want to uplift the voices of them, not just because they're Indian, because I know these people and I know how they teach and I know, they're rooted in their culture. But don't blindly sign up for something like a yoga teacher training. Don't blindly sign up to go on a retreat to a country you don't know. Think about your safety. Do your research on the teacher. Watch some of their videos if they exist online. Look at the testimonials, the reviews. Do your digging on the internet, because we've got the internet these days. There's so much to learn before you go, and listen to your gut, because that's super important.
For someone who is like intimidated by yoga or like wants to try it and do it, but doesn't really know how, where, or just different things to look out for in a studio or in a teacher, what advice do you have for them?
I think teachers that are teaching you more than just the physical, firstly, because that's respecting the roots of yoga, because that is the practice of what yoga is. It's not just your physical movement. But secondly, because you're actually getting better value for money. You pay for a yoga class, you're either going to move, or you're paying for a yoga class where you're going to move and you're going to learn deeper. You'll have a better understanding of what the practice is. You will feel more included, because that teacher is not only going to teach you things that are yoga off the mat as well as yoga on the mat, but they're also more likely to teach inclusive yoga, where you're able to use different blocks or props or things to support you. They're aware of, okay, maybe with your body type, try this, maybe try this if you're working with this injury. You know, how do we look at yoga from that perspective as well, that we're making everybody feel part of the practice? Because intimidation is such a common feeling that people have when it comes to yoga. So those are the things I would say look out for the teacher. A studio is really difficult to say, because the studio is just made up from the teachers. So focus more on that. A studio that ideally doesn't completely remove itself from the culture and completely disconnect yoga from the roots and the origins of what it is, I would say is super important. And then the last thing I would say is, if you go to a vinyasa practice, because it is all focused on your aesthetic and the way that others look and the way that you look and the way the teacher looks, know that you don't need to subscribe to the narrative of that in your mind. So if you go to the class, part of the observation is, are you comparing yourself with what the person next to you is doing, what the person next to you is wearing, what the person next to you looks like, feels like, you know, anything, any experience that you have of them? And that's a point where you can think, no, I'm going to do this in my own time. If there's a pose I can't do, I'm going to do what I can do off that pose. And if I need to take a rest, I'm going to give myself that rest because I deserve it. Even if everyone else in the class is in the fanciest headstand, I know that I can honor what I would like to do in this moment. And if we all have that individual approach to it, which, by the way, the teacher should absolutely support, then we will have a more inclusive, less intimidating space to be. And then we'll also have a person in that class that is more likely to go to the next class and the next class and the next class and see the practice of yoga really sink deeper within everything they do in life. And yeah, of course, you get more flexible, you feel more mobile, you feel like you reduce your back pain, you less tight in your shoulders. All of that is amazing. But like, first, let's get them to the practice more regularly and consistently. And so we have to overcome that barrier of feeling intimidated. So it's partly you. It is partly your responsibility, because you can't go in and quickly change the industry that has unfortunately created this exclusive environment. You can't force anyone else to change, but you can change your response to the class and how you act in the class, and then just try and spot where you see a teacher that is being inclusive and accessible and making you feel safe is a huge, huge part of it too.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like everyone's yoga practice is so different. And I love that you said it's like individual for everybody. You don't have to be able to do a handstand. You don't have to be very flexible. Even just sitting there and working on your breath, laying down for a second and pausing and realizing like, okay, my body needs a break now, is really important to be able to do. And that's something that a lot of people aren't able to kind of bring awareness to. I feel like as physical therapists too, we do a lot of like coaching and helping people activate certain muscles, or helping people realize, like, learn how to breathe. Sometimes people like don't even know how to properly breathe. Every single person, and my approach to every individual person is different. No matter like if you come in with the same diagnosis, like literally on the same like x-ray, you could have L4, L5 disc herniation, but everyone's treatment is going to look very different. And, you know, that sounds like it's the same with yoga. You have to come in there with intention, and your intention is going to be totally different than the person that's Matt is right next to you. So I love that you said that. But Angie, that kind of wraps up this episode. If you have any last things you want to add that we didn't talk about.
I think try to look at yoga differently. If you're listening and you've always had this view of what yoga is, take a moment to notice that your view of yoga is going to be shaped by the way that it's been marketed to you. And the way that it's been marketed to you has often been people that are very slim, physically mobile, incredibly flexible, that look a particular way. They're wearing a particular outfit that maybe you've not got access to. And so can you pause and realize that yoga is so much more than just the way that the West has marketed it to you? And that hopefully will open you up a bit more to being more open to the different practices that often are labeled weird and woo-woo. And you can actually get a little bit more of an openness within yourself to try them. Know that you've got the responsibility to let yourself drop into a child's pose or take an early shavasana, the corpse pose you do at the end of class, if you want to. But you're also responsible for doing that discipline, which is a big part of yoga, and challenging yourself when you feel the need to also take that challenge on. So I think taking the autonomy over yoga is part of that reclamation of yoga that I want everyone to do. You can't get yoga to more people if everyone's still stuck in this narrative of it's not for me, it's too spiritual, or I'm not flexible enough, or I don't have the right clothes to wear, or I don't like the teacher, or, you know, if you really want to try yoga, and if you're listening to this, let's hope that you probably are interested to some degree in yoga. Get rid of all these limitations that have come from the external that you're now kind of continuing internally, and open your eyes up. I promise you will have an interesting experience. I'm not going to say it's positive or negative because you'll label it so, but you'll have an interesting experience. And if anything, you will deepen your understanding of yourself. And once you do that, everything in life can become clearer because you understand yourself more. So that's my kind of hard pitch with yoga. I do believe it's for everyone. The ancient texts say that. And, you know, something doesn't survive thousands and thousands of years unless it's beneficial to some degree. And if you're scared, I've got free classes on my YouTube. So we'll leave all the information in the descriptions, but you can literally try for free, no obligation, not signing up to anything. Just try and see how you feel.
Yeah, go do it, guys. It's seriously like, I mean, the first time I tried yoga, I think was actually in Mel's class. I think that was, well, no, I did like, it wasn't real yoga, but I did it in college. It was like poolside yoga. Your class was really like the first like actual yoga class I took. It was so nice for me, for someone who has, you know, is very like hyper. I have ADD, and it's like, it's very beneficial for me, I feel like, to just kind of ground me and force me to just be focused on one thing and just relax for a bit. So it's definitely something that I want to like practice more frequently, just, you know, day to day.
No, that was great advice.
Yes.
I also say like every yoga teacher and studio is different. So like trial out different ones. Everyone is different. I've been to studios all over America now because I always, you know, when I travel, I try to go to a yoga class, and we travel for work. So I've been into like so many studios, and everyone is truly different. So like trial different ones out.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
You wouldn't go to one PT and then decide I'm never going to have a PT or go to the gym ever again because she annoyed me because she did this one thing. You know that you need to kind of maybe find the right one. It's the same with a therapist. You need to find the right one for you. So it is the same with yoga. I've had so many yoga teachers in my head. I've been like, this person is really annoying me and I don't like this one. This is a trigger that's come up. Like, why do I feel that way? I mean, who does she remind me of in my life? You know, and things like that. Then you can go introspective then. But ultimately, you need to find a connection, and if you have that connection and you feel safe, and then you're more likely to continue the journey. So, absolutely spot on. And think about it as a way to get to your high performance habits. You know, when I run these corporate wellbeing programs with big businesses, law firms, bankers, you know, it's actually exactly what you said, Alice. It's that the hyper and the attention span that we all, by the way, struggle with. You're going to become more focused. You're going to become, therefore, more productive, more efficient. Yes, it's going to relax you as well. Yes, it's going to bring up trauma too. Yes, it's going to do all these things, but it will 100% help you be a high performer and a high achiever if that's something that you want to be. So, I mean, there's just so many different benefits and different practices that you can use to your advantage, whether you need an energy boost or whether you need a calming down before bed.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, Angie, thank you so much for bringing your wisdom and your warmth to the Physio Diaries today. If you're listening and you felt something spark inside you during this episode, whether it's curiosity, inspiration, or just the urge to finally roll out that dusty yoga mat, where can all of our lovely listeners find you on social media? Do you want to
So
just go ahead and plug yourself?
I will. So it's at Tiwari Yoga, which is my surname, Tiwari Yoga. And that's Instagram, that's TikTok. The website is tiwariyoga.com. The YouTube is also Tiwari Yoga. And the retreats, if anyone wants to come on retreat, they're either in London or they're in Spain most of the time. It's We Are Unearthed on Instagram. But you'll find all the information about the retreats, the online yoga studio, the yoga teacher trainings for anyone that wants to become a yoga teacher, the corporate wellbeing offerings that we do in person and online, basically everything through tiwariyoga.com. So the website's got everything there. And if you heard this and you have a question or you just want to message me and say you listened, then please reach out. I always love hearing from people that have listened to podcasts.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, we'll also link all of everything on the episode description, and that'll be all listed out there for anyone that wants to check her pages out or is interested in like the YouTube classes that you talked about. I'm definitely going to look into those. I want to try one myself and see. But as always, thank you for tuning in. We really appreciate your guys' continued support. Don't forget to subscribe, leave us a review, and share this episode with someone who you think needs a little yoga real talk in their life. Until next time, bye guys.
Bye.